himself. Our next poet, Sheila Stewart, has 2 poetry collections, The Shape of a Throat and A Hat to Stop a Train. She co-edited The Art of Poetic Inquiry. Her awards include the Grit Lit Contest, Potter's Field Portfolio Short Poem Contest, and Scarborough Arts Council Windows on Words. Yay, Scarborough Arts Council. Ladies and gentlemen, Sheila Stewart.
In the beginning, word leapt from body and never returned. Body said, "You're mine." Word said, "I'm free." Page waited patiently, knew word would want to lie down in time, would fall in love with crisp white sheets, with making a mark, edge along the page and lie still. Thinking about Nick Beat and the loss of our poet friend, I returned to my first book, which is about the death of my mother. And I thought I would read the first poem in this book in that elegiac mode that this event is in. It's called Lady Bones. And I'm going to dedicate it to my daughter Rachel, who's here. Lady Bones. Why do I think of your collarbone? What can I make of it? A flute, a whistle, smooth like your bone-handled knives, the good set, tucked away in a felt bag, the everyday ones growing yellow. I want to know its exact shape, want to rub it smooth, bone gone to ashes, ashes far away, nothing in my hand. The bones the Swazi healers threw to tell us our future, what to do, whom to appease, the bones of ancestors rising up to cast our lot, a bone falling from a tree. I think of you, dry as a bone. Are you thirsty? Do I pick out the bones of the story? And your son's bones, bones with osteomyelitis, bones falling, bones that broke, that left him with a brace on his leg. So you said, keep it out of sight for the photo. Why do I want you, Skinnamalink Malone, skinny bones? You, the slim, delicate one. Your father said, every farm should be able to support one lady. Your lady bones, my wishbone. Hip bones letting forth daughters, my bones open and loose. How I shake them, spine elongated, 100 bony bones in this hand moving. Water rushes in rapids, smooth, back, hips, cheeks, rock face, cascades, wants to speak, ragged stones, quartz, marble, granite, sand, neither lapping nor storming, resting between shores, fill, pour, overflow. Water can lift a rock, hurl at the shore, reach and reach, as if rock sees and longs, as if it can raise itself, tumble into water, home. Unnaturally warm. Unnaturally warm for January, more than a thaw. The weather is wrong. We smile, then grimace. Eerie, says my neighbor, like March. An old woman is raking her lawn. The icebergs are melting. Anything can happen, and is. We sing off tune, our plumage fluorescent. I'm reading from The Shape of a Throat, and many of the poems are set in High Park, which I'm fortunate to live near. This is called The Warbler's Wander. And it begins with a quote by Rosa Luxemburg. So her words are, Only yesterday I read Why the Warblers Are Disappearing from Germany, Rosa Luxemburg, 1917. The warblers wander. The warblers wander the treetops, far from us, dropping ice cream wrappers. Our hypoallergenic dogs yap at squirrels. Yesterday, Wendy stood in Hyde Park, studying a grove of robins overwintering, wondering, are there more this year? Early March brings the widgeons back to Humber Bay. Make a joyful noise unto the Lord. Keening, Le Pluca Parfait doesn't help. False economies of grammar, ransacking hollow trees, fallow land, thickets and shrubs. Took all the trees, put them in a tree museum. Robin's egg blue, red-winged blackbird tilts over slashed canvas.
Our next performer is Niki Koulouris. Niki was born in Melbourne, Australia, and lives in Toronto. A beer enthusiast, she's been known to start spontaneous lists on napkins of her top IPAs. I'm going to have them at Tom shortly in honor of that. The Sea with No One in It from Porcupine's Quill is her first book. Everybody give it up for Niki Koulouris.
Okay, thanks, Peter. And that was actually Nick Beat's radio show. That was the first time. So I wish Nick Beat was here, like everybody who knew him tonight.
He is here.
That's a good point. I bet he is. So I'm going to read a poem from my book, The Sea with No One in It. I find political poems probably the hardest poems to write. That's why I kind of avoid them. But I admire artists who take on personal and political demons by making us see them in a different light. And I think Nick Beat did that as well. And Philip Guston did that. He cast the haters and terrorism in a new light. So I'm going to read a poem that I dedicated to Philip Guston. Actually, that's better. It's called Arrows for Stone Fruit. For Philip Guston. Did I leave the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art terrified of lemons when I imagined the artist as a boy of 10, standing there alone at the local grocer's, looking up at suspended scales, loaded with fruit? Had his errand preempted the afternoon piece of pie he was taking his father, pie that stained his hands magenta as he tilted its plate when wrenching open, somehow with small fingers, the door to the shed. I remember being menaced by a still life that day. That flamingo abattoir off Pink, hit and run double-decker of a bus by Philip Guston. Born in Montreal, moved to California, finished up in Woodstock, New York. Painter of cartoon Klansmen, distended bricks, light bulbs, an eye or two, paintbrushes, the undersoles of boots, the odd telephone and sandwich, plank, clock, and cigarette rolled into a snail. A man deplenishing his cornucopia of jetsam by depicting its contents as if fruit never existed, except for a few pounds of cherries punctured by their own stems. Do you really want to see shoe soles on a table, a few feet away from a cigarette that's burning its way to the table's edge, or a grazed one-eyed kidney bean read Memoirs of the Damned, or almost mount a bottle of Beaujolais? Maybe a portrait of the artist in bed, smoking, eating, painting, with singed brushes dipped in rose water that smells of sardines, or a landscape painted with cold pig trotters, or an unravelled wire coat hanger dipped in Valvoline, a besieged knoll of cherries, a sunburned Ku Klux Klan carpool. Now that all that is pink in the world is alive, you never know when you will.
Jennifer Hosein is a poet, short story writer, visual artist, and teacher. Her poems and short stories have been published in magazines and anthologies in Canada and Europe, and her artwork has appeared in solo and group exhibitions. Ladies and gentlemen, Jennifer Hosein.
Been here, so I didn't think I'd ever be reading Nick's poems. I'm going to read 2 of his and a few of mine. I'm going to begin with one of his and end with one of his. But I didn't think I would ever read his poems to an audience, because he was always going to read his own poems, and I was always going to anticipate new ones, whether it was in his apartment in the beaches or at an event such as this. I met Nick in 1992 at the Art Bar in the Gladstone Hotel, and he was wearing a beret and a striped t-shirt, and we argued, and then he drove me home. So that's what Nick did. But I think he was in a very good place before he left. He had his book of poetry, Famous for Falling. His CD, Famous for Falling, was mixed, and his novella was almost completed. So I'm just going to, it's an honor. Pat, thank you for having me. And Nick is always in my heart, and I believe he is looking at us and enjoying the evening with us. The first poem I'm going to read is from Nick Beats' book. It's the first poem in Famous for, no, sorry, it's in the Tyranny of Love. And it's about the kind of God that he wanted to believe in. It's called God Without the Price. So this is Nick Beats' God Without the Price. I'm just going to put the light on. Okay. I want to love a God without the price, to be ruled by a thin, wispy king, who casts a shadow so slender, so small, whose universal rain gently falls, whose flaming sword neither gouges nor gores, whose chains honey me close, whose sweet attentions succor me with sweet felicity, whose mourning lasts but a moment over grievances struck against his capital, his kingdom, and his throne, whose fortunate nature as a sun moves across the sky like a sentinel, marching back and forth, guarding my dreams from dark intrusions, so that I may be safe and secure, not burdened with fear, but protected, not subjected to the love of this God without the price. So thank you, Nick, for that. I was watching his videos and trying to see how he would read it, but there's no way I can do him justice. Anyhow, I had a run in my stockings. But I thought I should put on some other stockings, but I thought, no, Nick would like the run in the stockings. Yeah, you know what I mean. So anyways, I'm going to read a few of mine, and then I'm going to end with one of Nick's. The last time I read this poem, Winter, I read with Nick at the Hittite Gallery in Yorkville. And so that was, I think that was the last day I saw Nick. It was about 4 weeks ago now. And we went on to another party of that. It was a wonderful night. This piece is called Winter, and it's about mourning. It's I wrote it after my mother passed away and my daughter moved to Los Angeles. And it's based on the myth of Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, who despaired when her daughter Persephone was abducted by the king of the underworld. It's called Winter. I am Demeter, in winter black as Hades, turning fields to stone, forests to dust, in my wrath and despair that my beloved is gone. I pick rocks from the side of the road to eat in the absence of corn. They thunder along my intestines, dulling the noise in my head. Persephone, why have you gone to chase after shadows? I scream inside the walls of February, wait for my beloved who is light, breath, sun, spring. Make love to boys, I have turned to bones in this drought I have brought. I am Persephone, bound beneath the light, longing for the tick of my mother's heart, the pad of her yellow feet on the floor. But my winter will linger for years, and my mother will tread across the skies, her feet into mountains, her face yellow as the sun, peering down at the shadow I have become. Demeter is my mother, Persephone my daughter. I am neither, I am all, I am only winter. The next poem in the following in the Poets for Change thought is about racism. It's when I was growing up as a teenager in Scarborough, there was no multiculturalism back then, and it was the 70s, and I couldn't walk on the street without being verbally assaulted or physically assaulted because of my color. So it's called Streets. The mean streets of the suburbs when I was 15 were ugly as sin to me, and I was ugly as the mythical monster that lived beneath the bridge. Sticks and stones broke all of me as the townspeople called to arms, spit and rocks and fists. They fanned away from the dark shadow that spilled out of me like blood and black tears. So I ate only apples and turned to bones, and my hair gleamed, and my eyes were hollow as I crawled through the bleached halls of the high school, hid in the bathroom stall, slid home quick through the afternoon, cried in my closet, died in the night. The last piece of mine that I'm going to do is about violence against women and how it comes disguised as love. It's called I Love You. I love you, he said, you are my heart. I'll cut your tongue out so you can't speak like that anymore. I'll cut your feet off and I'll carry you around when I want. I'll cut your hands off so you can't touch another man's face the way you touch mine. Will you cut my cunt out, she asked, so I can't fuck another man or even myself. I'll cut it out and keep it in a locked drawer. I'll take it out when I need to, and place it in the space between your legs. Or maybe, if I'm angry, I'll take it to another room, put it around my cock, and thrash around some. I'll cut your breasts off so no man can look at them. Then you can wear what you like. What will you leave me? She asked. I'll leave you my right hand to hold when you're alone, and I'll leave you my heart. The last piece I'm going to do is from Nick Beat's book, The Tyranny of Love. Again, I thought it would be fitting. It's called And Lest You Forget You Are Eternal. I don't know how well I'll do this, but here goes. Unless you forget you are eternal, and God did not fashion you to be a soldier, but a soul, and every blank page you are about to write on is but a door white to heaven's bursting. And there is no light at the end of the tunnel, for you are the light, the end and the beginning, and the vagaries of age leave you pale as a ghost, losing touch, taste, sight, and smell for this world, and so tuning into the next. And night after night you commence the endless rehearsal for your own endgame, played out 1,000 times to the point of parody. to the end of farce, to the point where there is no point. And what are the blankets you wear but a winding sheet, a burial shroud, as you lie horizontal, eyes closed, lights out, darkness fetches a mirror, and you make your nocturnal inventions in sleepy silence of puffs of time, a dreamy alliance of heaven and hell. Unless you forget, you are eternal, so good night and get a good sleep. Just before I get off here, I would like to say let's raise a glass to Nick. I don't have a glass. The poet, artist, songwriter, and best friend. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Pat.
2. Hang it on a skeleton of art under a cowl of yellow lace, lopsided dangles, ligaments torn, tied with twist ties. Its post shoots up the coccyx like a steel epidural. Bony skull of yellowed resin, shadowed eye sockets watch. 3. Who peers out the split mask? The mask is cracked because my face hidden in the slit veneer. My other face hangs torn. Ripped from the skeleton, I cut it open and seal it shut. 4 eyes look at you. 3. When the leader started gassing his people, burning the lungs of babies, tearing the eyes of prisoners out, electrocuting the dying, she wore the mask on fissured streets in combat gear. She was held together with masking tape and cotton wadding. Her spine rusted metal. Like an egg breaking the shell moon mask. They thought she was sexy in her split white mask. For they didn't see the ghost she was becoming. Through the nightmares of their sleep, she hunts the torturers. 5. Silent screams, ravaged cities. Millions flee civil war. Refugee camps overflow. Mutilated families, wounded, dysentery, rape, open sores, hunger. Children scatter high, playing games of the war-torn. This detritus of living. 6. Love is a masked shadow whispering in lonely nights. The gold stars, ragged tents, shanty lean-tos, huts, clouds, cold craters of bombs. The moon is a stone egg, and our own faces peer out at us. 7. Focus on where you are torn apart. 8. When I wear the mask, I inhabit negative space, the emptiness between things, the shadow of the invisible. On the underside, the displaced fill the mask. You can hear them. Mold of bones, the hanging skeleton. I fill in the tendons and muscles and skin with torn bits, broken eggshell, string, rags, oily feathers, soft fish spines, plastic bags. A conflagration floating in the wind. In the subtext, subhuman surgery. 7. The mask, a paper image burning. Take off the mask, and the mask underneath. Thank you.